Okay, with that, State, do you wish to make an opening statement?
We do, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. You may proceed.
May it please the court?
Yep.
Counsel. He didn't know, because there was no way he could know, that his time here was limited. Very limited. That he was in fact breathing his last breaths here on earth. Living the last moments of his just barely 27 years of life here on this planet. He didn't know, as he was out with friends celebrating his birthday, that he was being watched, that he was being followed. He was being stalked. Stalked and observed while he was celebrating. Stalked and observed by a group of killers, a group of conspirators who were now executing a very premeditated plot that had been hatched and birthed days before. A plot that had been hatched between them with every single one of their collective evil intentions directed into one common purpose, one common goal: the premeditated murder of Charles Jones. This group's collective hatred and animosity, which drove the conspiracy that existed between them, this evil and despicably wicked conspiracy. He didn't know that now all of their planning, all of their surveillance, all of their advanced coordination was now coming to fruition. Coming into fruition in such a precise way that he only saw his killers for mere seconds as they rapidly closed in on him, dressed from head to toe in all black, like ninjas coming out of the dark. Disguises that included balaclavas and ski masks. Disguises that these conspirators had decided well before this moment that they were going to wear, to use to hide their identities from the ever-present and ubiquitous cameras that permeate our culture. As Charles Jones sat there in the front passenger seat of his Dodge Charger, their plan came perfectly together. He was now the perfect target, caught completely, entirely off guard, completely blindsided. As these gunmen appeared, seemingly, you will see in this evidence, out of nowhere. A perfectly planned ambush, and there's no other way to say it. The evidence will show you clearly this was an ambush, a designed ambush, one that they had carefully planned and now were orchestrating. Unable to run, unable to dive or even duck, basically caged in the front seat of his car. He was basically a sitting duck. And these killers, they didn't hesitate, not for 1 second and not for one moment. They moved rapidly into their pre-planned positions, into their firing locations. And then they immediately unleashed a hellish onslaught, affecting a precisely coordinated violence of action, sending a barrage, a wall of hot lead, crashing into the only barriers between Charles Jones living and Charles Jones dying. Those barriers, the automotive glass, the sheet metal of the front of his Dodge Charger, which were absolutely no match for the high-powered 5.56 and 300 blackout caliber rifle rounds, which were now traveling at him directed at him at thousands of feet per second, each one of them carrying over 1,200 foot-pounds of energy, directed specifically at Charles Jones. A Glock 9mm handgun was being utilized by one of these conspirators, a handgun that wasn't just a semi-automatic handgun. It had been converted to a fully automatic hand cannon, and now it was running wide open, dumping all 30 rounds of its magazine through the front end and the windshield of that Dodge Charger. All of that gunfire filling the dark early morning hours with booming concussions and bright flashing muzzle flashes as these high-pressured and high-powered rounds flooded the atmosphere in front of that Dodge Charger. Charles Jones. You've heard his name in the indictment. That's his face. Just a few seconds of the mountain of evidence that you will see in this case of what happened that night. Evidence that will show you clearly that these co-conspirators hatched this murderous plot not minutes, not hours, but days before this, formulating in their hearts and minds this agreed upon collective and confederated plan with one common agreed upon goal: death, violence, and murder. A conspiracy motivated and hatched days before, hundreds of miles away from Tampa. A conspiracy that would span through those days and over 500 miles of travel. Reservations were made, uniforms, disguises obtained and selected. Gear was obtained, weapons selected, weapons loaded, and weapons modified and made ready. Transportation was obtained, vehicles with specific purposes, and a plot that required advanced planning and logistics to include housing, communications, and transport would materialize and become reality. A criminal, murderous operation. These co-conspirators leaving their homes in the northeast corner of this state, traveling here, traveling to their target. Conspiring to murder Charles Jones, not in his home, not in Jacksonville, not on his home territory, not at his residence, but here in Tampa, while he was on a birthday trip, while his guard was down. And you will see in this evidence the clock-like precision of these co-conspirators, how they worked together as a team in this team effort. Principles. This is a law that you heard a little bit about. You'll be instructed on it at the end of this case after the evidence is given to you by the Honorable Judge Sisko. She will instruct you on the law of principles as well as the law on murder and all the other laws that you will need to render your verdict in this case. The law of principles, if a defendant helps another person to commit or attempt to commit a crime, that defendant is a principal and must be treated as if they had done all the things that the other person or persons did if we prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, that they first intended that the crime occur and did some act or said something, anything, that was intended to and that did incite their co-defendants to commit this murder, cause them to, simply encourage them to, assist them, or advise other persons to actually commit that crime. Now, incite, cause, encourage, assist, or advise the other person to actually commit or commit the crime. For first-degree premeditated murder, we must prove that this defendant intended that Charles Jones be killed. It is not necessary for the principal to know every detail of how a first-degree murder will be committed as long as they intend that it occur. And they did some act or said something that was intended to help or did help the murder to occur. But almost more importantly, the principal, the defendant, does not have to be present when the crime is committed or attempted to be committed. But in this case, folks, you will hear that this defendant, Alicia Andrews, was right there, driving right next to that Dodge Charger in the seconds before this murder happened. If the defendant is found by you to be a principal, then she is legally responsible and accountable for everything that her co-conspirators, her co-defendants did. Alicia Andrews, these are her co-conspirators. I don't know if this laser is going to work, if you can see. In the upper left-hand corner, that's Rashad Murphy. Lower left, Davion Murphy. Sean Gaithright is in the upper right. And in the lower right is her boyfriend at the time, Isaiah Chance. These were the 5 conspirators. This was the assault team that took out Charles Jones, that took his life, that snatched it from him in the early morning hours of June 23rd. Isaiah Chance, Sean Gaithright, Rashad Murphy, Davion Murphy. To understand the murderous intent that existed amongst them, and to understand this conspiracy that dwelled in all of their minds and hearts, we have to go back and look at the lives and associations of Charles Jones and these defendants. What did Charles Jones do to these defendants that was so bad that would cause them to confederate, to conspire, engage in this coordinated, planned attack? Charles Jones belonged to and was affiliated with a group known as 6 Block. He was a member of that organization. It exists in Jacksonville. It's known as 6 Block, and it is a street gang. It consists of several members. 2 other gangs in Jacksonville, ATK and 1200, were affiliated gangs. They despise 6 Block. They detest them. They abhor them. And the level of hate between these groups is a mutual hatred. The evidence will show that these gangs have been at war for several years. And when I say war, the evidence will show you this is a war going on in the streets of Jacksonville. The hatred and the dripping animosity of these defendants towards Charles Jones, it ran deep. And the evidence will show you that. In fact, you will hear that in October of 2023, just 9 months before this, before the murder of Charles Jones, he had left his residence in Jacksonville in that same black Charger about 6 o'clock in the morning. He came to a stop sign in his neighborhood, just a few blocks from his house, when a shooter with a high-powered rifle opened fire on his car, striking his car several times and striking him in his lower leg, spraying bullets all over that neighborhood. Mr. Jones at that time was able to drive himself to a local hospital, receive treatment, and be released. That bullet, or fragment of bullet, remained in his leg until it was removed by the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy on his body here in Tampa after his murder. Earlier that same morning, a member of ATK, a man by the name of Tilly, was shot and killed at a high school football game. This shooting of Charles Jones was clearly retaliation, but Charles Jones was not the shooter of Tilly. But that didn't matter. So why was he targeted? You won't hear any evidence to suggest that he had anything to do with that shooting. He was affiliated with 6 Block. And you're going to hear in the evidence that he wasn't just a member of 6 Block, he was a notorious member of 6 Block. Probably the most well-known member of that gang. In fact, he was the public face of 6 Block. The spokesperson, basically. He posted on social media, but most notoriously and notably, he wasn't just a spokesperson for 6 Block, he was a certified celebrity. Charles Jones had millions of followers on social media, if not tens of millions of followers, because he engaged in an activity that you heard a little bit about yesterday from one of your fellow jurors, and he was spot on. That's exactly what the evidence is going to show you in this case. This long-standing pattern of what is called drill rap. And it is an activity that Charles Jones embraced and that he engaged in under the name Julio Foolio, which was in fact his street name, Foolio. Julio Foolio. In this type of rap music, it's not just rap, it's disrespect. It's making fun of and disparaging not only ATK and 1200, the opposing gangs, but disparaging their members by name. Disparaging, and probably most incendiary you will find in the evidence, bragging about the death or deaths of other ATK 1200 members who have been murdered. As I said earlier, make no doubt about it, this is a gang war. Mr. Jones, you will see in the evidence, not only produced this music, he produced music videos. Videos where he would travel to the gravesides of these individuals, or a graveside that was used in lieu of their graveside, and do things during the video like lay on their graves and sing around their graves and use sarcastic lyrics in his songs, pour champagne on their graves, rubbing it in the faces of ATK and 1200. And ATK and 1200 were no better. They did the same thing. You're going to see videos from members of that gang One young man in particular, Kenyatta Bullard, known on the streets as Young and Ace, who produced not only songs about 6 Block members who had been murdered, in the days after the murder of Charles Jones, he produced a song just within almost 48 hours and put it up, talking about the murder of Charles Jones, the specific facts of it. This created in those 5 individuals, in their minds and in their hearts, a vendetta. This was revenge. Because he ridiculed them, and he ridiculed their gang, which was their family. He ridiculed their friends, which were their family members. They were close, deep running bonds of loyalty in this organization. Because they have each other, and they defend each other. They defend not only each other, but they defend each other's honors. And they defend their affiliations. This is the murder scene. Let me see if this will work. Home to Suites, McKinley, Fowler, USF is directly across the street. The USF campus lays literally feet away from this hotel complex. Over here you can see it's a Holiday Inn. This is the portico right here where the shooting happens. What you will see in this evidence is that these shooters arrive here, and they come in and they go around the north side of that complex as Mr. Jones is sitting here at the portico with 2 other cars full of his friends and partygoers, people celebrating. His girlfriend was in the other car. He was a passenger. His friend Xavier Edwards was driving. His longtime friend Gino Norris was in the back seat. They pull in. The shooters come in this way. They go around. They come down here, and they park in this area here. And then they act on foot, and they come around here, surprising Mr. Jones. You saw Mr. Jones' car try to evade the shooting and go this direction. He goes straight up here. There is no road here, but they make a road in their desperate efforts to get away. They go right past this dumpster, and the Charger ends up here. This is Mr. Jones arriving. He's been out celebrating, you will find in the evidence. That is Mr. Jones with that open passenger door. The vapor you're seeing is coming out of the hotel. That's some type of a dryer vent. Mr. Jones in the red stocking cap pulling up his shorts. He walks in the hotel. As you can see on the timestamp, which is slightly off by a few minutes, this is about 4:30 in the morning. They had been out through the night. They had gone to a couple of clubs. Mr. Jones appeared at one club and performed, and then he went to an after party at another club. He had attempted to make a reservation here, but because they appeared so late, it had been given away. You'll see him come back and get into his car. Video slightly sped up here. That car entering right there, that's the assault team. And as I said, they go northbound around the north side. They avoid driving near this entourage, Mr. Jones and his friends. This Nissan Altima that's pulling up is part of the entourage that was with Mr. Jones. The driver, Tafa McCrae, is a friend of his. You will see his girlfriend get out. And they go inside of the lobby to use the restroom. So Tafa and his girlfriend, Aaliyah Albritton, they walk in to the lobby, and they're actually inside there in the bathroom when the shooting happens. Now, you probably didn't see it, but when Tafa got out of the driver's seat of that Nissan Altima, Camilla Bentley slid right in behind him. That's another friend of Mr. Jones and friends with these folks. She's sitting in that car at the time of the shooting. She takes her round through the arm. This car driving by, that is the spotter car. That is the surveillance and reconnaissance vehicle. This is just before the shooting happens. And you're going to see that car come right back by. It goes down, does a three-point U-turn, and comes back. And now we're mere seconds away from the attack on the Charger, on the attack on Mr. Jones. You'll see the Chevy Cruze go southbound on McKinley. Down to the lower left, you saw the shooter with the automatic Glock. That's him in the lower part of the photo. So you see in this video, Xavier Edwards desperately trying to get them out of harm's way. But what he didn't know was that up on the top of that screen between that, I think it's a Mercedes and that yellow car, was the third shooter. So what he ended up doing was driving and you'll see it come to fruition here, directly into a vortex of high-powered rifle fire. Now, what you're also going to find in the evidence, and you can see the electrical charging station up here in the upper right, this is the edge of a Tesla that's sitting at another Charger. That Tesla has its, I believe it's called Centurion function on, and it is recording from multiple cameras around the car. And this is one of the recordings. You'll see several in the evidence that picks up the third shooter running down behind that row of cars and taking up position by that yellow car. He is the shooter on the other side of the street that forms that deadly vortex of fire as the Charger goes by. And as the Charger, you will see in the evidence, runs down the side trying to escape down the side of the hotel, this shooter comes running up to this position by the charging station and is opening up fire down the west side facing north of the Home to Suites. That is the headlights of the Charger fleeing up the west side of the hotel, heading north. The third shooter. That's the Charger at the impound lot at the Tampa Police Department. You can see the impacts. Every one of those yellow stickers on the hood, the side, and the windshield are all impacts. That's the Altima that Camilla Bentley was sitting in. It took 2 rounds to the back window. This is Xavier Edwards, who was the driver of the Charger. That's him at the hospital. Gino Norris, Mr. Jones' friend, who was in the back seat. He was shot in the upper right arm. And Camilla Bentley, who was shot in the upper arm. These were the other partygoers. Armani Turner is Mr. Jones' girlfriend at the time. Miss Randolph, her friend. Robert Howard is an associate friend of Mr. Jones, who was in the car behind the Charger, which was a Hyundai. Tafa McCrae and Aaliyah were the ones in the Altima. You could see in that video that these gunmen acted with suddenness, they acted with speed and fury, and they brought overwhelming firepower. Not one shooter, not 2 shooters, but 3 to create that vortex that the evidence proves to you, with high-powered AR-style rifles and a fully automatic Glock 19, bringing all of that firepower to bear in a concentrated area easily, and rapidly, establishing not fire superiority, but fire supremacy, the evidence will show. Firing, as you saw in that last photo from the Tesla video, with absolute impunity and disregard of anyone that may be in that area. The majority of that fire you will find in this case was funneled directly into the passenger compartment of the Dodge Charger. And every single one of the rounds that were fired that night, every single one of them was dripping with the hatred, the malice, and the premeditated intent of all 5 of those conspirators. The evidence will prove to you. Mr. Jones attempted to evade the gunfire. He was leaning up against the dashboard. You may have seen in that photo, on those videos, but you'll see it during the trial. Look for it. His feet are up on the dashboard. He's leaning back. He's on his phone. The evidence will show trying to find a hotel, trying to find lodging for them. He barely has time to pull his feet down. The evidence will show he attempted to jump into the back seat, to go through and across the center console. Before he could do that, one of these rounds smashed into his chest, and that round tore through his heart, through his lungs, and through the largest vein in the body, the aorta, a gigantic artery that supplies blood up and down your body. And when he turned and kind of flipped over to try to crawl into the back seat, he took 2 more rounds to his back. Those rounds ripping through not only the muscles of his back, but into his liver. These shooters, as you've just seen, leveraged surprise. They leveraged it in this attack to make sure that Mr. Jones didn't stand a chance, to make sure he couldn't evade this attack. Not this time. This time he was going to be killed. They took full advantage of this ambush that they had planned. And you saw in that evidence the determination of these shooters, the assault team in this conspiracy, They didn't stop firing when the Charger went through that vortex. They kept firing all the way up the side of the hotel as the Dodge Charger fled, almost a block away. That last shooter you saw in the Tesla video, opening up fire, rapid fire. And as I said, firing with impunity. This was a perfect ambush spot because Mr. Jones' car was stuck. He couldn't go backwards because his girlfriend's Hyundai was behind him. To the left was a parked car next to the beams of the portico. On the other side was the hotel. A hotel. And on the other side of the wall in the glass of that hotel was high-density humanity. That didn't stop these killers. That didn't give them any pause for concern. You're going to see in the evidence impacts around that portico, numerous windows that are blown out in the front of that hotel. And not only in the lobby and in the front of the hotel, up and down the west side of that hotel, impacts. Impacts through windows that coursed through hotel rooms where people were sleeping, families. That hotel was packed with people. Parents there with their student children that were there for orientation at USF. People were there with their small children here in Tampa sightseeing. This overwhelming firepower and violence of action had an effect of confusion. Now, it wasn't confusing to the killers because they slipped away into the darkness. They were gone almost immediately. But it had that effect on the victims. Gino and Xavier. When that Charger finally comes to a halt, bullet-riddled, they realize that Charles Jones is gone. And they also realize that they both have been impacted. They have both suffered gunshot wounds. They flee out of that Charger, and they flee immediately to the west into the Holiday Inn because now they don't know where these killers are. They don't know if they're there or not. So they flee and they run into the hotel. And you're going to see in the evidence, their flight leaves a thick blood trail and a very obvious blood trail. They run in, they get on an elevator, they go to the third floor. When law enforcement respond, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, the confusion that was caused, they go to the area where the Charger is. They see the blood trail. They don't know if that's victims. They don't know if that's shooters. They go into the hotel thinking that they're going to be coming face to face with shooters. They go up the elevator and they go onto the third floor and they find Mr. Edwards and Mr. Norris laying on the ground, bleeding. Camilla Bentley, you saw in the panic between her car, or the car she was driving, the Altima, and Miss Turner's Hyundai. One's backing up and one's going forward, and they collide going out onto McKinley. Camilla Bentley drives off, but then she turns around shortly thereafter and comes back and picks up Taifa and Aaliyah, who are inside of the hotel lobby. They then drive nearby to Advent Health, where Camilla is treated for her gunshot wound. Meanwhile, Armani Turner, the victim's girlfriend in the Hyundai, she ends up somehow on Fowler going eastbound and comes across a traffic stop being conducted by the University of South Florida Police Department, just a traffic stop. She pulls up and her and Mr. Howard get out and they make contact with the police, who are having a hard time understanding them because they were so frantic and so upset. So they follow them. They try to follow them. They actually lose sight of them because she's traveling so fast. Meanwhile, Tampa Police Department are responding to multiple 911 calls of shooting at the hotel. An officer responding sees Miss Turner driving. She drives through the intersection of Fowler. McKinley goes right over the landscaping and into the parking lot. He follows her, not knowing who she is or what her part of this is. and they end up making contact with her. Officers end up driving down to the south end because it's brought to their attention that there are impacts and broken glass all over the south end of the home to suites where the shooting actually happened or began. And the first officer who gets there comes into the scene and he notices all of these 9mm pistol casings laying in the scene. And he's looking at the impacts and he's already seen the charger. And he's wondering, where are the rifle casings? Where are they? Well, you're going to hear in this evidence there were no rifle casings, even though 2 rifles were firing at a high cyclical rate in this attack. They weren't there because these conspirators modified their rifles. They put what are called brass catchers on the rifles to catch the brass, the shell casings being ejected from these AR-style rifles. They modified them. Just like they modified that Glock pistol and made it fully automatic. That was confusing. That was beguiling to law enforcement, at least in the beginning, until they started obtaining the video that you've just seen. So how does this conspiracy unfold? How does all of this start? It starts with Charles Jones, Julio Foolio, you see his name on the top of this post on IG, putting out on his IG account this advertisement for June 22nd, which was a Saturday. The murders happened in the early morning hours of the 23rd, going into Sunday morning. And you see Mr. Jones in the middle, advertising he's going to be appearing, Julio Foolio, at Teasers on North Nebraska in Tampa, hosted by Kenny Kay. And he puts at the bottom, my Airbnb pool party, June 21st. And that's when he arrived here. He and party goers arrived here that Friday. They had rented an Airbnb in Holiday in Pasco County. And they ended up on Saturday night leaving the Airbnb because he had started sending out, telling people, send me messages and I'll message you back with the address. And so many people appeared that eventually the owner of the Airbnb pulled the plug and told them to get out. But you see down here at the bottom, my official birthday party, June 22nd at Club Teasers, and gives the address. So he is making it very well known when he puts this promotion out, where he's going to be, what address he's going to be at, and when he's going to be there. This is another flyer that he put up. 8 p.m. to 3 a.m., June 22nd, at Teasers. He even puts a photograph here of Tampa. My Airbnb pool party. DM me for address. And my official birthday party at Club Teasers gives the address again. So he's advertising his whereabouts. He's advertising his whereabouts. Now, Miss Andrews, the defendant, sitting right over here at counsel's table, this is a message that she sends, and you see on the top there, oh, that's red. That is her Instagram account. You will find that. You can see on the top right, her registered email to that account, verified Alicia Andrews 72 at yahoo.com. She sends that this message on June 21st, that's Friday, at 10:52 UTC. That's early morning the 22nd, or earlier that day, sorry. UTC, if you're not aware of that, is Universal Time Code. It's Greenwich Mean Time. So you got to back up 4 hours. So she's sending that on the Friday night. Hey, could I book a B&B in Tampa? This is 2 days before the murder. To a Kiera Axe Marie. Hey, what's dates you need? Tomorrow, but what day do you have available? How many bedrooms? Like 2. Logistics. This is the beginning. She's trying to find lodging. Trying to find lodging. for this operation. Now, a few moments later, a screenshot of an Airbnb message is documented. The message is addressed to Rashad Murphy, confirms his reservation at Lagoon Oasis 9703 Gazebo Pond in Tampa, June 22nd to June 24. And in the message of that message there from the owner of the Airbnb, our HOA requires for security purposes that all guests booking with us provide a valid ID, which he obliges and sends his valid ID. Now we go to the 22nd. This is the Saturday. Earlier in the day, before Julio Foolio is going to start appearing at clubs in Tampa. This is the residence of Sean Gaithright, one of the conspirators. That is Mr. Gaithright walking out with a large duffel bag, and Isaiah Chance walking out with bags. And you'll see they start loading that black car, which is a Chevy Impala. That is the car that goes north in the hotel complex. That is the car transporting the assault team. And they load the bags into the trunk. That BMW on the top of the video there is being driven by Mr. Chance. And you see him bringing out another large bag. They're kitting up, and they're getting their gear into their transports. You'll see in the evidence that Mr. Chance ends up leaving in that Beamer. He drives and picks up his girlfriend, this defendant, Alicia Andrews, and brings her back to this residence. And then the three of them, Miss Andrews, Mr. Chance, and Mr. Gaithright, get into that Impala, and they drive here to Tampa, and they drive to the Airbnb, and there will be zero doubt about all of that, because that Impala, while it's en route, is being picked up on license plate readers. You will see in the evidence their cell phones are tracking, hitting cell towers as they travel in unison all the way down to I-75, coming across from Jacksonville and heading directly into Tampa. When he comes back, Mr. Chance brings his contribution to the assault team. The Glock pistol with the extended magazine. He tucks it into his waistband. You can see the extended magazine sticking out in the trigger guard and the slide and the dust cover of the pistol. Just a more close-up photo of it. And you can see it bulging out of the right side of his warm-up pants he's wearing. So these three, Chance, Gaithright, and the defendant, get in that Impala. And they drive. You'll find in the evidence that Gaithright in the middle and Chance, the defendant's boyfriend, are very tight. They were close friends. Mr. Chance calls Mr. Gaithright his little brother. And you'll see in the video when they are loading up, you'll see more video during this trial of Mr. Chance putting in the codes on the front door of the house that Mr. Gaithright lives at. Now, the second car, the one that I pointed out to you, the surveillance vehicle. This is a Chevy Cruze. This car is also picked up on license plate readers after law enforcement determined its involvement in this case. They go back and they find it. And if you can see in the lower left-hand corner, 7:46 p.m., June 22nd, it's on Bruce B. Downs at Tampa Palms, getting real close to where their Airbnb is. And by the way, the Airbnb they book is 1.3 miles from the murder scene. You will see in the evidence that the LPR, the license plate recognition systems that are picking up these two vehicles, show them traveling in unison, hitting on the same license plate readers at the same time, at the same locations as they travel from Jacksonville. That car was obtained by Rashad Murphy outside of the circle of ATK 1200. It was specifically located and utilized in this case as a car that would not be recognized. Now, this is the LPRs for that car, the Chevy Cruze. You can see it hitting where it hits Dolphin Drive. That's the day before in Jacksonville. On the 22nd at 6:01, Highway 441. At 18:09, Highway 326, it's traveling through Gainesville. And then at 1947, 7:47 p.m., Bruce B. Downs, Tampa Palms Road, and then at 0342 Hillsborough, and then we get into the surveillance and the time before the murder. The ones at the bottom are the return. That's when they're returning to Jacksonville. This is showing you in these license plate readers the Cruze on the top and the Impala on the bottom, hitting simultaneously on the same dates, 1809, 1947, 1945, 0341, 0342, at the same exact locations. These cars are traveling in unison because they are part of a team. This is the Airbnb that they stayed at on the night of the 22nd, going into the morning of the 23rd. They didn't stay at a hotel that has a lobby with security cameras. They stayed at an Airbnb with one single Ring camera. Now, that's the front door on the right, or on the left, excuse me. You can see the Ring camera. You also can see that that lock has, like most Airbnbs, has a combination lock on it. That's the defendant when they arrive. And that day, she's the only one seen going through that door. You're going to hear in the evidence when she walks in, this is from a video, someone inside saying, "My bad." So they're already inside, but she's the only one that goes through the door that day. The other ones, the evidence will show, this is back the back side of that same building, and down the back, and there's the back door. Must have entered, the evidence will show, through that entrance. Later that night at about 1:40, this is going now into June 23rd, 3 hours before the murder of Charles Jones, and less than an hour before they begin to hunt and stalk him at Teasers, where he's appearing. Her phone leaves the Airbnb and starts tracking by hitting off cell towers to a nearby McDonald's at 22nd and Fletcher, 2205 East Fletcher. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, if you've never seen these before, that's the cell tower. This is the area of the cell tower, or the part of the antenna that's being utilized, and it falls within that area. And you can see there Fletcher, Advent Health. That is her in the passenger seat. And there's not going to be any doubt about that in this case, because when she's later interviewed by police, she identifies herself. Because you're not really going to be able to see her face, but she says, "Yeah, I'm in that car. That's me." You can see the driver, Davion Murphy, he's lighting a cigar. You can see a little flame. You're going to watch on this video as they proceed through this drive-through. You just saw her turn to her left. She identifies Mr. Chance as being in the back seat of that car. That's Davion Murphy in the driver's seat. They eventually drive off, but what you're going to find in the evidence is they buy a lot of food. This is not food for one person, it's a lot of food. And that's significant because later she tells the police that they went there because she was hungry and wanted something to eat. She also tells them she doesn't know who the driver is. Can't give an explanation for how he even came to be in that car or how she came to be in that car. Now, this is outside of teasers. As you saw, Teasers is a club that is on Nebraska here in the city of Tampa. So, as you saw in the evidence of the shooting, the success of this conspiracy, this plot to murder, this attack, hinged on the element of surprise. It absolutely hinged on that. And they leveraged the surprise that they had, catching Mr. Jones off guard. And to have that type of surprise, they had to act with a coordinated knowledge, and they needed intelligence. They needed intel. They needed real-time information. Where is he? What's his route? They needed to know exactly where he was. They needed to know his positioning, his routes of travel. And like any good operation, the key to success is intelligence, critical intel. Now, to obtain intelligence like that and to do so surreptitiously, secretly, the surveillance has to be done. In a surreptitious manner. Without that intelligence, without providing that real-time information to the assault team that's in the Impala, there would be no surprise, there would be no ambush of Mr. Jones, and this conspiracy would fail. It was that intelligence, that real-time surveillance and communication, the locations and routes that were provided by this defendant and her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance, operating alone in that Chevy Cruze, while the other three conspirators, the assault team, were in the Impala. And they were doing everything they could to keep that Impala out of the sight of Mr. Jones and his friends, because Mr. Gaithright drove that Impala. It was registered to his mother, but he drove it all the time. He was notoriously known for driving that car. This was a coordinated team effort. In order to remain secretive and to not alert the target that they were conducting surveillance, they utilized several different techniques. Number one, they parked away from the club, and they utilized disguises. That you heard some about yesterday in jury selection, about COVID masks. You're going to see in this video, June of 2024, they're both wearing COVID masks. Now, interestingly, because it was suggested yesterday that there's many reasons people could wear COVID masks, it's the only time in this evidence you will ever see a mask on this defendant's face. You won't see it on her face when she returns back to Jacksonville through an Uber. You won't see it on her face any other time when she's entering into the Airbnb around her four co-conspirators. But they kept their distance, and you'll see that in this video, from the victim and his entourage. They attempted to blend into the background. They needed to get close enough to be able to conduct surveillance, to gather the information they needed, but not so close that they would be detected. They had to avoid that. So first they used an unrecognizable car, and then they used disguises. But what you're going to find And remember the law and principle. She doesn't even need to be there to be part of this conspiracy or to be a principal. She's there. She drives there with Mr. Chance, and they park in the north end of the parking lot of Teasers. And she doesn't stay in the car. She gets out and she walks with him. You're going to see that. You can kind of see their images in the upper right-hand corner. This is a video. I'm going to play it in a minute. You're going to see him hand her phone to her and her put her code into the phone to open it so they could utilize it to convey what they were watching and seeing. And again, they're out in the parking lot. She was there with them in the field, shoulder to shoulder, in the thick of it, on the ground, in the action. So they're wearing these masks, and it's not just like some costume mask. Obviously, a COVID mask is not going to necessarily draw that much attention, but it is going to hide their identities. Mr. Chance has a hoodie up on his head, along with the COVID mask. They are clearly trying to disguise themselves. But again, she didn't stay in the car, she got out. And there was a reason for that. Because instead of allowing Mr. Chance to walk around in this dark parking lot with a hood on and a mask on by himself,
Objection, Your Honor. Argument.
walking.
Overruled, go ahead. Again, this is opening statement, members of the jury. It's just a chance for the lawyers to tell you what evidence they believe will be admitted in this case. But again, it is not the actual evidence, all right? Go ahead.
But instead of allowing him to walk around in that parking lot by himself, a single man with a disguise on, she went with him. Because now they would be a couple. They would fit in. They would be non-threatening. So she acted not only helping in conducting the
Objection, Your Honor.
reconnaissance,
Argument.
Overruled, go ahead.
she acted as camouflage. She acted as a disguise in and of herself. Now they're a couple. Now it's not just a single person who may be seen as threatening or may draw attention. This is just a couple walking around in the parking lot in a club where a lot of people are milling about in groups. In groups. She provided that by being there in the field with them. She provided that cover and that camouflage. And she provided, obviously, a second set of eyes to watch. Both of them surveilling and watching Mr. Jones and his entourage. And then, as I just mentioned a minute ago, she provided the comms, the communication, her phone. Now, you're going to see in the evidence, Mr. Chance's phone is tracking all the way to Tampa from Jacksonville. And it's tracking at that Airbnb. It's hitting off a nearby tower, but it's her phone they're utilizing, you will find in the evidence. Now, you're going to find in this evidence that they were not utilizing the calling function of that iPhone or even its Apple text message app, the two ways that most people communicate. They're using some kind of a special application to be able to communicate that's undetected. But at some point, they have to break radio silence because the person they're communicating with, Sean Gathright, is not answering. He's not picking up his phone, so they actually send a text through the Apple text message app. Pick up your phone. And that's right around this time, just a few minutes later. You see the defendant opening the phone for Mr. Chance, and you can see their COVID masks. One is wearing the blue COVID mask that was so prevalent in 2020, 2021, and she's wearing a black one. This is Mr. Jones and his friends arriving at that club. And you can see the time there, 2:22 in the morning. That, again, is several minutes off, but it's about that time. 2:21, and there they are, and you see Mr. Chance on the phone in the parking lot at the same place. Now later, after Mr. Jones has gone into the club and been in there and done his thing in there with his friends, he's now leaving. You can see Mr. Edwards' head up there. It's 2:46 or about that time. 2:46. 59, almost 2:47. And what happens at 2:47? This car up here in the upper right, that's on that road, which is Nebraska, is pulling in to the north end of the parking lot of Teasers. This was an extremely orchestrated, well-orchestrated conspiracy, coordinated. He's walking out of the club on the other side of the club, and out of the blue, the assault team vehicle is pulling into the club. That is tight surveillance and intel. Now, in this photograph, it's 2:48. This is Mr. Jones' Charger. You can see the lights starting to light up because they're already inside the car and they're getting ready to leave. That's the Impala that has come in on the north side, gone down the west side, and is now passing in the front. Out of necessity, passing in the front. So this is just an aerial view of Teasers. You can see Nebraska over here to the right. You can see this little road here, South Castle. The defendant and her boyfriend come and they park here in the north end. They get out, they walk around, they come around this way, they stand here. The entrance is over here. So they're way down here. You kind of saw that in that photograph, which would put them down there to the west. They conduct surveillance, they walk back up here, they get back into the car, and then they drive out onto East Castle. The assault team comes in the red arrows, comes in on the north end. We just watched it. They come down this way and they go down Castle. And as you can see, before I move on, a lot of folks standing around out there. A lot of people. Potential witnesses. Now, from there, when Mr. Jones leaves with his friends in the three cars, they travel to another club, an after party. This is Truth 18 on Bush. The Dodge Charger, the Hyundai, and you'll see the Altima come up. Down here to the lower left, you can see some of the party, Miss Bentley, Miss Albritton, Tafa McRae in the light blue. And up on the top there where you just saw the flashing lights, it's Armani Turner and Miss Randolph getting out of the Hyundai. And there's Mr. Jones in the lower right with the red hat, very recognizable. So they go up to the second floor of this strip mall where this club is. That's Gino Norris in front walking up, his friend. And again, this is for an after party. And you'll see Mr. Jones will start live streaming with his phone. again, advertising his location. This is from another location, and you can see the Chevy Cruze up in the top part of the screen. And now, in the top of the screen, the hooded individual, the defendant, and Mr. Chance conducting more surveillance. Walking as a couple, so they're not threatening, they don't stand out. With her phone to his ear. And now they walk back again past the club. Mr. Jones and his friends leaving. The Impala on the top of the screen. That's across the street. You'll find in the evidence that the victim and his entourage go down the parking lot, they do a U-turn, they come back out, they end up heading east and then doing a U-turn and going back west. The Impala just crossed the street. Now it's back up at that stop sign in the upper right-hand corner. And you'll see it'll just sit there for a while. Mr. Jones and his friends coming down the stairs. A lot of people milling about, a lot of cars, the evidence will show. And finally, they leave or start to leave. And they come back. Charger followed by the Hyundai. Followed by the Altima. On the top of the screen, Mr. Jones' Charger is going to do a U-turn and go back westbound, followed by the Hyundai and the Altima. There goes the Cruise, heading the same direction. Now, this is the intersection of McKinley. Oh, let me let it play through. This is the intersection of McKinley and Fowler. This is the Home to Suites and Holiday Inn complex in the upper right-hand corner. Directly across the street is USF. There's an Embassy Suites there. That is Mr. Jones' car doing a U-turn and going back on McKinley, and you'll see it turn into the hotel complex, followed by the Hyundai and the Altima. And as you can see, there is no car visible except for those oncoming lights now coming up the northbound side. That is the Chevy Cruise. It goes eastbound. No other car on McKinley can be seen. It's not even in sight. The Chevy Cruise ends up going eastbound, then comes back westbound, turns northbound. There it is, into that parking lot. And now, several minutes later, comes the Impala, which, this is the assault team. Does a U-turn, you will see, goes southbound on McKinley, following the path of Mr. Jones and his entourage, and pulls directly into that hotel. That car wasn't anywhere to be seen when Mr. Jones and his entourage were going in there. But the Chevy Cruise was there with this defendant and Mr. Chance providing critical intelligence to them with this defendant's phone. Once it pulls in, you'll start seeing cameras from different locations within the complex mounted on the Home to Suites surveillance system that'll pick up the Impala's path as it travels. So the Chevy Cruise, at one point after the Impala goes in, blows through a red light on Fowler to get over there and turn in to the hotel. By that point, the Impala is all the way around on the west side, you will find in the evidence, of the hotel, and setting up for the attack. But now the Cruise has to come, the evidence will show, to drive by and confirm where is Mr. Jones. The red marker is the Impala and its path. It comes in, it goes northbound, it goes westbound, it goes southbound around the Holiday Inn, down across the south end side of the Holiday Inn, back to the east, and then it parks. First it goes down, you can see that red arrow next to the Home to Suites on the west side. It kind of pulls down there and has to back up and pulls in. When the blue markers is the Chevy Cruise, when that pulls in and pulls around and does the three-point turn. You're going to see in the video evidence right here, they pass within feet of each other at the same time. And of course, the Impala never goes around or reveals itself past that point, keeping out of sight of Mr. Jones and his entourage. This is a camera mounted on the east side of the home to suites, pointing to the southeast, and it is picking up the Impala now, pulling into the complex and going northbound on the east side of the hotel. This is going to go to a camera facing north-northeast, showing it passing, still going northbound. And then it turns back to the west. This is a camera that's mounted on the north side of the home to suites that picks up the Impala as it passes and turns towards the west. And now the Impala is on the west side of the hotel. There's this pool and this patio area here that's on the west side of the hotel. Going around this way would be the portico. This is the west side of the hotel. The charging stations are right here. And you can see the Impala comes and stops. It does not go around that southern end of the home to suites. It's avoiding the southern end at this point. And here comes the Chevy Cruze passing directly past in the car that's not known by anyone, the victim. Goes to the north where the Impala is. Goes right past the Impala. Does a three-point U-turn and comes back. This is another camera picking up the Impala and the Cruze. That's on the Tesla, part of its security system. You'll see the Cruze kind of do a little turn there, back up, and come back to the south. I don't know if you saw that or not. The Cruze is turning around, but the Impala is pulling into a spot over here at the same time as it passes back by.
Objection, Your Honor. This is cumulative.
Overruled. This is opening statement. Go ahead.
So now the Cruze is coming back, doing one last pass, and now we're within seconds of the attack, the murder itself. You can see individuals at the top of the screen moving. You're going to see them run by the front of the Tesla, getting into position. There's the third shooter, Davion Murphy. And now they come around the pistol shooter, Rashad Murphy, and the shooter on the top of the screen right there is Sean Gathright. You see the collision between the Altima and the Hyundai as they're trying to get out of there. You see Mr. Murphy come out of hiding and Mr. Gathright opening fire. You'll see Mr. Gathright and Mr. Murphy running back to the north. And you saw this, there's the muzzle flashes of Mr. Davion Murphy's rifle. And you saw the Charger going to the north. That's the Charger picked up by the Tesla cameras heading north. There goes Mr. Rashad Murphy, there goes Gathright, and there's Davion Murphy. And you can kind of see the blocky image of the brass catcher on the side of that rifle. Another view from the Tesla of Davion Murphy running back to the Impala. This attack was relentless, as you saw. They weren't going to stop. They were going to make sure that they killed Mr. Jones, that he was not going to live, that they were not going to go back to Jacksonville without him dying. And you saw that relentless attitude of these defendants as they were shooting. This is the Airbnb. That's a photograph of, well, actually, this is a video. So this is the night they get there. This is Saturday, the 22nd. The defendant entering. There's no volume on this, but when she walks in, someone says, "My bad." Mr. Chance having maybe a celebratory drink. This is the next day around 2:30, 3. You can see he has to keep knocking. The person getting in that silver car is an Uber driver who they have called. That is how they returned to Jacksonville. The defendant, Mr. Chance, and Mr. Murphy this time returned to Jacksonville. Now they're unloading, bringing out all of their kit and their gear, their weapons. There's Mr. Davion Murphy. Now they're getting sloppy because it's the next day and all of the conspirators are visible. There's Mr. Murphy trying to go back in. Mr. Gathright walking out with gear. They don't they don't leave the way they came. They flee from this murder separately and in a different format. That's Mr. Gathright. He leaves independent of the others in the Impala.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is now reading the evidence, stuff that's not even been introduced, Your Honor.
Well, because it's opening statement. He's just telling the jury what he believes the evidence will show. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
You can see Mr. Gathright goes over to the side, to the back, and that's how they got in the day before. The evidence will show Mr. Gathright, Sean Gathright, whose house they all started at with the Impala. He leaves, but he doesn't go back to Jacksonville. Mr. Gathright drives across I-4 to Polk County, to Auburndale, to his grandmother's house, where he switches cars. He leaves his Impala at his grandmother's house, and he takes her Toyota 4Runner, and he drives that to Orlando, where he goes out that night to a club, and he posts a photograph of him drinking Don Julio tequila, which is a diss to Charles Jones. Charles Jones, Julio Foolio, was known in all of his social media to drink Don Julio. That's where the name came from. He was notorious for that. This Mr. Gathright drives over, switches cars, goes to Orlando, then he ends up in Jacksonville. That's Mr. Gathright being picked up on a flock license plate reader system. This is him coming. This is on June 22nd. You can see 7:39. He's in Hillsborough County. So 6:23, he's eastbound on I-4 at 4:13, eastbound on I-4. This is the Sunday after the shooting. 6:25, southbound Florida 559 and Fred Jones Parkway in Polk County. This is Mr. Gathright arriving at his grandmother's house in Opal Avenue in Auburndale. You're going to see him walk in. You see the Chevy Impala, the assault car, sitting in the driveway. Law enforcement go there later. They get this video of Mr. Gathright switching cars. You're going to see him wiping down the Impala before he leaves. And there he is leaving in the 4Runner, saying goodbye to his grandmother. That 626 date in the upper right-hand corner is wrong, 623. The defendant and her boyfriend, Mr. Chance, and Mr. Rashad Murphy, who had come there in the Chevy Cruze with his cousin, Davion Murphy. Now Rashad Murphy traveled with them in that Uber. There's the Uber receipt, $187, 3 hours, 25 minutes, 208 miles, from Gazebo Pond to Chipperfield Lane in Jacksonville. You see the route on the left, they go up 75 and they cut through I-10, heading up to Jacksonville. The Uber driver in this case will testify to you that he picked up 3 people at an Airbnb in Tampa and dropped them off at Sean Gaithwright's house in Jacksonville. That this defendant and Mr. Chance sat in the back seat, and the whole way they're on their phones, and they're not wearing a mask. This is them arriving at Sean Gaithwright's house. He's in Orlando or in Auburndale at his grandmother's house. Again, Miss Andrews is not wearing a mask. She's unloading along with Mr. Chance, and you're going to see Rashad Murphy here with some kind of a hat on, like a beret, with the same bags that were loaded up into the Impala. He's handing something now to the defendant. And down on the right through that crepe myrtle plant, you can see Chance in the driver's seat of the car. Mr. Murphy wearing the same jeans that he was wearing when he got arrested 2 days later in Gwinnett County, Georgia, northeast of Atlanta, driving the Chevy Cruze. He was with his girlfriend, Charmaine Steiger. They had picked up a hotel that morning, early in the morning. Law enforcement pick up the tag on flock cameras in Norcross, Georgia, and Gwinnett County. In Gwinnett County PD, you will hear from 2 officers from that agency who will tell you, the first officer being the one who arrests Mr. Murphy, that he came into contact in the hotel parking lot, pulls in behind the car, the Chevy Cruze. Mr. Murphy pops out of the driver's seat. He's yelling at him at gunpoint, "Show me your hands, show me your hands." Mr. Murphy doesn't hesitate. He takes off running. The officer chases him and tases him and knocks him down, where other officers stick guns to his head, and then they cuff him, wearing the same torn-up jeans or type of jeans that he's wearing in the photograph from Jacksonville 2 days earlier. That's a photograph of Mr. Rashad Murphy in a Walmart on June 21st that you will see in the evidence in Jacksonville, where he bought a burner phone, and he's wearing the same clothes or clothes that are consistent in appearance to the Glock shooter, the person with the Glock switch shooter. You can see he's carrying it. You can see the similarities in the belt. You can see the similarities in the shoes. And you can see he's carrying it in his left hand, which is confirmed through investigation. He is left-handed. The defendant's phone, 904-405-6748. This is a tower hit at 4:40 at the murder scene. She identifies herself as being in that Chevy Cruze, but you don't even need her own words. You can see it in this evidence. She's in that Chevy Cruze, providing the critical last second intelligence to the shooters, to the assault team, as they drive out of the parking lot. Those shooters, when they came around the corner, and the evidence will show, directed their fire directly at the passenger side of that Charger. They knew exactly where Charles Jones was. Now, this is 7/6. This is a couple weeks later. This would be what? 13 days later. This is the defendant and she's messaging from that Ooh That's Red Instagram account with Tarnishe. You keep telling me to wait a week. That's why I've been sitting. She's talking about Mr. Chance, and she's sitting at his house. The person she's messaging, just have them bring you tomorrow. Okay, why wait a week? Down at the bottom, to make sure no police sitting around before I go there. Did you get your phone? No, the lady said, the detective said we have to wait, but if until his charge dropped, but that's weird, it was only resisting arrest. So Mr. Chance had been arrested for resisting arrest, and they had obtained during a search warrant of that house, they had obtained the defendant's phone, and this is about her getting her phone back. Ms. Tarnisha responds, oh, July 6th, well, let them keep that phone. And Ooh, That's Red, this defendant texts back or messages back, yes, that's what I said, laughing my ass off, LMAO. It was a whole different one. Oh, well. Okay, now this is later, July 9th. Police here looking for you. The defendant messages back. Where are they at now? Waiting. Outside. Oh, okay. Oh, never mind. She texts back, WYM. I don't see them no more. And then the defendant, not text, messages back. They somewhere waiting, probably. So what is that all about? Why is she saying it's a whole different one? She's saying that because 2.5 days,
Overruled, go ahead.
2.5 days after this murder, after getting back to Jacksonville, you're going to find from the evidence that this defendant goes and gets a whole new phone. And she gets rid of the phone that she's had for years.